Just want to welcome everyone to this masterclass today. And I'm going to share a high-level overview that we often do in companies when we're sharing it and engaging the rest of the team. So we often work with the CEO and the exec team, but often we need to do a bit of an education to help people understand the framework because they hear this thing called scaling up, or maybe in the past Rockefeller habits, and they want to kind of understand what it is and what generally what the CEO is all excited about and why they're talking about this and why do they want to do this. And so I remember years ago, probably 8 years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago, Roger Hardy, founder of a company called Coastal Contacts or Clearly Contacts. They were a scaling up user, and I interviewed him for the book. He started with Rockefeller Habits. We connected recently, and we're laughing and enjoying a little bit that at one point he took all of the employees in the company, and I was set up in a hotel conference room, and he would bring them by for over 2 days in bus loads. Like he'd bring 2 bus loads of people. I would walk through a presentation like this, and then they would go and I would do it again and again, because he just wanted to get everyone aligned and on the same page. So I'm going to kind of give you a short version of that so you can see the framework and the overall, I would say, benefits and structures of scaling up. So I guess initially started from a book called Rockefeller Habits, and then scaling up is the new and improved version. And that was a conversation Vern and I had, and I went and drove that project for a couple of years. That was a massive undertaking, and interviewed 50 CEOs around the world who had used Rockefeller Habits and built their thinking and their insights and their examples into the new Scaling Up book, which is a great guide. What I recommend to CEOs and their teams, don't sit and read the whole book. It's the working title was Rockefeller Habits Implementation Guide. It's meant to take a section and then do a deep dive on that section, but don't overwhelm yourself with all the parts. If you implement it all at once, you're going to probably be in trouble. And at the root of this is that we know that growth is exciting and it's rewarding, but sustainable growth is elusive. It's hard to keep it growing up and to the right like we all aspire to. And so scaling up is a framework, a tool, one of the tools we use to help with that. And really, for a lot of us, there's all these mini growth curves in between, and most businesses bonk along the way. Whether the CEO has enough or the shareholders have enough, there's these growth spurts that we go through, and then if we're not careful, we end up riding it down. And those are the stories that we don't want to become one of. The stories along the way that are not a lot of fun because people do great things and then all of a sudden it stops. No different than a pilot learning to fly a plane. They get into serious turbulence, and next thing you know, they're nose down, heading for the ground, and they don't know how to turn it around. And that's unfortunate. And we're trying to help prevent that and give people tools and resources to thrive. And in our case, learning to defy gravity, just like a pilot of a plane. It's hard to keep a business in the air and continually growing and gaining altitude. And the question, just to start with, they go, why do you think sustainable growth is so rare? And that's like, think about that. Why is it? And generally, we have smart people with great visions and good intentions and wanting to do good things, but it's hard to sustain. Sometimes it's because people run out of energy, and there's a lot of theories. Although after doing this for close to 30 years, there's only a few real reasons why it doesn't happen. And again, that's what we're going to try and cover a bit of today. And here's what we find, and this is the work I'm doing in my new book, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But generally, what we've seen over the years, the CEO is too focused on internal or short-term issues. The CEO has their head in the clouds and is not connected to driving the strategy of the business for whatever reason. Sometimes on the people, there's just too many weak people that are no longer absolutely amazing in their roles. And over time, that happens with growth. Strategy, it's too complex, and people aren't aligned and accountable to things that drive and link to the strategy. And numbers, the reporting doesn't help decision makers make better decisions. In theory, the IT people think it's cool. Finance might love it, but the operators aren't able to make better decisions because of it, generally. And we're going to dig into the strategy one today. All the rest, there's always challenges and opportunities, but the strategy one we'll dig into. And we've done thousands of projects around the world, thankfully. Our great clients have taught us so much. And at the bottom, we've also been a part, I just updated the number to 300 million of bad decisions, $300 million burnt in decisions where we've been in the boardroom and something like, this is a great idea and a great strategy. And then we see it play through over a number of years and realize the errors in ours or their way. And that's been insanely valuable, the lessons we've had with all the entrepreneurial companies. And many of our clients have had notable exits. This is just the exits, not the value creation that the family businesses have built over the years. But so we're grateful to be a part of a lot of stuff and being able to pressure test a lot of these tools and approaches. We've got an amazing team of advisors working with our clients around the world, mostly CEOs and their teams, helping them to thrive and continue to grow, and our support team that backs us up and makes it happen. And myself, I've been doing this for 30 years. And, as I've talked about, the key driver and behind the Scaling Up book. And, another one on my other shoulder, your oxygen mask first. So Scaling Up is about scaling the organization. The oxygen mask first is about scaling ourselves. But I love this stuff. It's a lot of fun. It's, great work. But at the root, we're just trying to make it simpler for companies to continue to succeed. That's it. It's complex, it's noisy, and it's hard. And I mentioned the books, and my new book, 4 Forces, about sustaining this growth and staying in that growth mode, which it's such a hard project, but it's close to getting done. And then our approach is basically is that we go back to the problems. The CEO continually focused on growth and growing their capabilities. On the people side, just stack your key roles with aces. On strategy, what are your 3 big moves? And let's make it real simple and align people to it. And in numbers, they should provide insights to the teams that the numbers are for in 60 seconds. Literally, you should be able to review the data in 60 seconds and then have insightful conversations. That's kind of what we focus on. It's also how we assess companies from the long term to the short term. How are we on those 3 main pieces? And the oxygen mask first for the growth of the CEO. A lot of the stuff to drive growth strategy, Scaling Up as a framework, we use a lot of Collins's principles as the core content. Especially those 2 books, Great by Choice and Good to Great. So let's drop into Scaling Up. So to quote Collins, to start with, the master, and it's interesting, this quote, when you go to his office in Boulder, that's tucked away, when you first time I went in, I saw this on the wall, and like, this has always been my favorite quote of his, and it was the quote in his office, which I thought was pretty cool. But greatness is not a function of circumstance. Greatness, it turns out, is largely a matter of conscious choice and discipline. Focus on the discipline. Lots of people want to be great. It's the discipline where it falls apart. And that's the root of his books. And that's why we use his books as assessment tools, implementing his principles as the core things that drive value and help companies to scale. And the root, it's about the commitment to be great and then making the tough calls. At the end of the day, most of the work we do is not rocket science. It's helping people to intelligently make the right calls and the toughest ones in particular, and then finding creative ways to navigate those tough situations. And the idea is that we want to create scale-ups that continue to grow and thrive and not stay like a mouse or not become the old elephant and a bureaucratic mess that no one wants to be a part of. And the root of it, it's 1% vision, 99% alignment, is getting the team focused on the vision and the goals and aligning their efforts and their projects and their investments, and ideally being excited by it. Super easy to say and hard to do. And that's a lot of what our work is and Scaling Up is about. And it takes this concept of strategic planning, breaks it down into 2 different things: strategic thinking and execution planning. And what's fascinating over the years, there's only a few people who are really masters of strategic thinking. And lots can be learned, but some people are really, really good at it. And it's often very different humans who are good at execution planning. And so we need to tie those 2 together in a way where we have a great strategic plan that we can win with, and then people that are amazing at bringing it to life. On top of it, it's people resourcing, and it all starts with people. And that's the root of Collins's work. People, 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 people. And once you get your strategy and your execution system sorted out, it's all about people generally, and capital in some cases. And then finally, the cash modeling for those that don't know it. Some people don't understand cash. They really get profit. But many people aren't understanding of cash flow and how that can help or hinder your growth. So at the end of the day, we got this great vision and we got these 4 pillars. And what happens is as companies grow, they've got a couple favorites they love to focus on, and then usually a couple they neglect until it falls over. And so this is just a visual case study of a client we worked with in manufacturing that was doing spectacularly well, huge momentum. And they were executing like crazy, generating cash like crazy. It was spectacular. Like life was good. It was really, really good. But what we noticed in all of this, and the challenge in all of this, is that they neglected strategy. Strategy was weak, and strategy wasn't continually pushing ahead. And as a result, when the market changed, they were left and everything slowed down. And they found that they were strategically irrelevant in the market. They had given up their strategic competitive advantage. They didn't know it. But the market was so strong and they were so focused on execution that they basically shot themselves in the foot. And it took a few years to recover from that. In the end, they got it back. It was good. But it took a few years of pain because they neglected that part of the business. And scaling up as a framework to help you see different parts of the business, people, strategy, execution, cash, and some very straightforward tools. And then pay attention and dial in what you need to dial in, and don't over ignore or neglect one of the key pillars. So I'm going to skip through this. Oh, 1 second here. Something has... There we go. So, and this is some input to my new book, but this is a shout out to BP, Brent Parent, one of the great strategic CEOs that I had the opportunity to work with. And he calls it BP's two circles, or I call it BP's two circles. He just says big circle, little circle. And it's always a reminder for strategic leaders is that we got to focus on opportunities and not get consumed by problems. And he calls it for his team 95-5. 95% of your time focused on opportunities and 5% on problems. And you can repackage opportunities as problems, but generally focusing on continuing to grow your business versus fixing things in the business. And obviously, if it relates to a customer, he would probably call that an opportunity. But the key point is that a lot of times as companies grow, that 5% can become 75% of what CEOs and their team spend time on. And that doesn't scale. Just as a funny side note, BP, one of his things, some people was talking about problems in one of our strat meetings we did for years. And he's one of those notable exits on the list. They did very, very, very well. And he said, hey, anytime you want to talk about problems, come to my office between 8 and 8:30 any morning. That's problem time. And then he laughed in his way that he did with this smile. He's like, and I'll be there at about 9. He just didn't want to deal with them. He figured that the key amazing people he had hired and were leading his divisions could figure out their own problems, but he wanted to talk about growth and opportunities and pushing the business ahead. So a question for you to think about for your business. What is the greatest opportunity for you right now? Is it in the people part of your business, the strategy, the execution, or the cash? And if you have a chance, drop that in the chat. People, strategy, execution, or cash. Which one of these do you think is your greatest opportunity for growth and strengthening your business? Awesome. Second thing to think about, in Rockefeller Habits, the original Rockefeller Habits, there is 10 different habits, which for our clients, we assess them on at least once a year. But which one of these habits do you think would make the biggest difference on your growth, ideally? The healthy exec team, everyone aligned to the number one goal, meeting rhythms, accountabilities, like all these different habits are in. We're not going to get into all these habits, but a lot of these habits are core in scaling up. So I want to drop into people. I'm just going to do a quick time check. Drop into people. This is where we start with. It is the most important, and it's the hardest part of the game. Going back to Collins's principles, discipline people, discipline thought, discipline action, and then you spin the flywheel, and eventually you get that breakthrough that everyone's looking for. But it all starts with disciplined people, the right people, not creative people. Creative's easy. Creativity is super overrated. Unless it's creativity to help lead people to do great things, then that's great. So disciplined people, which is level 5 leaders, and then first who, then what. Basically, first get the right people on the bus in the right seats, and then let them do their great work, and they'll figure out the what. So let's drop into this. We call them A players in our language, or I like to say aces in their places if we were playing cards. And what Collins says, and he is the source code on this stuff. If you want to be a great company, you need 90% of your key seats filled with the right people. That is critical. And the right people, these are excellent people, level 5 leaders who do great work, who are a dream to work with. But you can't be a great company if you only have good people. It doesn't work. Think of professional sports. So we look at great people through the filters of values and results. Values is natural fit within our culture and our belief in operating systems and how we treat people. And then results, getting stuff done, achieving what they said when they said they would achieve it. And an A player is high on values and high on results. A B player, we love them. They totally fit our culture. They're amazing and they're loved. They just don't always produce results. And you normally have to drop down. You normally have a part-time job with them to help, or quarter-time job to help them and oversee them and manage them because they can't get it done on their own. They're fine. You just can't have too many or you're not going to win. And then we have what we call toxic A's and C's. C's are easy because they're just taking up space. They don't fit the culture. They don't produce results. They normally get worked out of the system. The toxic A's are the problems because they're high-performing jerks. They're high-performing people who don't fit your culture, and they produce really, really good results at a cost to everybody else that they work with generally. And they take a lot more energy. And, the rule of thumb we have is if you're in the red box, you got to go. Like, you got to be an A to stay. We don't have room for these people. We either get on culture or you go find a job in a company where you naturally fit and you'll be better off. And these A's are just amazing because they don't need a lot of supervision or management. They do the work of 2 to 3 humans. They deliver, they solve their own problems. They're just an absolute delight to work with. And then the companies that we see that continue to scale and thrive, they have a lot more of these people than normal. And I see, a CEO or a leader in a company, Clements, on the call. And, there's a great case study you'll read about his company coming up soon. But they've done a lot of work on this and done very, very well by getting exceptional people into the roles. And we have lots of companies who have built out this winning strategy. And it's just following the principles of Collins and some other tools to help get there. But huge focus. And that makes it a big difference. Get those ones in the bottom zone out, have them find a place they're happier, and build your company so it looks like this. And 90% in your key roles, your key leaders, the key impact jobs are filled with A players. And then it's a heck of a lot easier to build, sustain, and we'll all also enjoy it a lot more. It's a lot more fun to do that. So that's the idea of A players. And if we can't get these great leaders and have them continue to scale, the company can't grow. It doesn't work. You need great people that can lead this. We can only do so much. Another case study in this, Amish, another CEO we work with out of the US, built a great company over years. And long story short, as we started to work through the strategic work with him, one, we realized we had to redo and boil down and simplify the strategy because it was too complex, which one of our team members did. And then as I was coaching him, what I found is he also needed to replace his entire executive team. This is a substantial company. But anyways, you can read the case study and you can watch the interview with Amish as well, but it replaced the entire exec because they weren't A players. And it was bogging it down and bogging him down as the CEO as well. So at the root of with people, it's about engagement and accountability. And in scaling up, there's a specific tool called the function accountability chart. And you go to your specific functions, and I'll zoom in here, like the head of company, marketing, R&D, sales, ops, treasury, controller, etc. And then you're figuring out what numbers, so first of all, who owns them and who is the solitary owner of the different functions? And 2, what are the input numbers or the activity operational metrics we would measure success by? And the results or the outcomes on the income statement or balance sheet we would measure success by. So we can get away from feelings and liking people and personality and more get to input and output. How are they producing? So coming up with clear measures for every role. And people talk, well, we need KPIs and dashboards. Yes, as long as it's a simple handful of numbers for the inputs and the outputs of each of those key roles. So there's a great tool to help define accountability and also carve it out. It's one of my favorite tools in scaling up. It's very, very powerful. So that's one of the tools, super important, and it helps you to clarify it. The other tool around people is from your oxygen mask first. There's a bunch of different habits that you can tap into with tools and exercises to help people grow. So we can go on about people forever, but that's probably enough for now. I'm going to switch to cash unless there's any questions on people. I'm seeing people comment on about execution. If there's anything else, please ask questions in the Q&A or the chat, whatever. Decision number 4 is around cash. So people, strategy, execution, cash. Interesting thing about cash is shocking how many senior leaders, even CFOs, either don't understand it or at least don't use it and talk about it in the business. So it's the distinction between making money and having cash in the bank. And profit and cash sometimes can fight each other. And you can make a lot of profit and run out of cash. That's why some companies go bankrupt, even though they're profitable, because they can't pay their bills. They don't have enough cash to cover the expenses. And so there's a tool called the cash conversion cycle that is pulled out of another HBR article, which is how fast can your company afford to grow? But it's understanding how cash moves throughout the business and can get buried. And it's interesting that for a lot of companies, this is an eye opener. And one of our companies recently had $90 million of inventory. In reality, they should have had 50 or 60. And we found a way to more aggressively manage inventory, still take care of customers, and put 20 million bucks back in the bank account because it was just sitting in inventory in a warehouse, and it was more than was needed. And that's common. Inventory is a hard thing to manage, but this tool helps us to get granular and give us some specific tools to pull cash out, to identify and pull it out, and to measures to better manage the business through cash, because most people just manage the business through profit. And there's this thing called cash conversion cycle, which as you dig into it, it is incredibly, incredibly powerful for a lot of people. And I'll share an example. A CEO in the US in a manufacturing business, I had done a session on scaling up to educate his team. And then he called me one day in a bit of a panic and said, Kevin, I think I'm running out of cash. I'm going to go talk to some private equity people. I think I need a cash injection. And I said, okay. So I told him, go run the mathematics, have a CFO run the numbers in that HBR article and produce all the cash reporting that helps to understand what's going on. So he was an awesome guy. I really liked him. So I said, and he goes, where are you this week? I said, well, I'm booked up, but I'm going to be in Chicago. I'm flying out. He goes, well, can you stay one more night? And he's like, I said, sure. So he flew to Chicago. And the guy, like he's got his own jet. He flies in on his jet, puts us up at a spectacular hotel downtown Chicago in a suite. And we walk in, and I reviewed what the CFO sent, and it was garbage because the CFO wasn't very capable, it turns out. And then I just started asking a few questions. Long story short, he says, I don't know, Kevin, because they're doing $100 million of revenue. They should be making 20 million of profit. Super profitable business. And he goes, I don't know. I just got a big discount on our biggest raw material, which was steel. And I just negotiated a 4% discount, and we spend about 50 million bucks a year on it. So he goes, I should be up by 2 million bucks. Well, I said, how'd you get the discount? Well, instead of paying them in 60 days, we just pay them in 15. And I paused. He didn't know what he told me. Like, he didn't know, because he'd never thought about cash flow instead of profit. He was driving profit. And then I had to sit there and find a very respectful, elegant way to share with him that based on the math he had told me about his business and what I saw from the CFO, I would figure that his bank account would have went down by 6 million bucks, because 45 days, which is 1.5 months cash. And they spent, based on what they would spend a month on steel, blah, 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 it was about 6 million bucks. I said, well, how much did you normally used to have in your account? He goes, yeah, we always have 5 to 7 million bucks. Yeah. How much do you have now? He said 0. I said, and then I shared the math with him. And at the end of the day, he was able to keep part of the discount, and he went back to his 60-day terms. And after a few financial cycles, he was back to normal cash again. Point is, he didn't know. And this tool is so valuable. And for all of us, we get stuck in positions and make bad decisions because we don't have the right tools. Like, we just don't know. So this cash tool is an absolute game changer. There's other things around profitability. This, for a lot of people, makes a massive difference because growth sucks a lot of cash. So really powerful tool. Strategy, the one-page plan, which is really the core tool in all of the scaling up tools. And it takes all these strategic inputs and puts it into one document so you can keep track of it and don't get lost. And Michael Porter, who was in the past the real grandfather of modern strategy, and he says competitive strategy is about being different. It's in deliberately choosing a different set of activities to deliver a unique mix of value. And that just means it's about being unique and not following your competitors. The surefire way to screw up your strategy and your competitive advantage is pay too much attention to your competitors and pay too much attention to what your customers and your employees tell you. Because your customers only know you in context of your competition. And if you just listen to those and pay too much attention, you will commoditize your business. Remember, your job is to be different, not to follow everyone else. And just go back to the basics of IKEA. There's another one in Canada called Jysk, which is similar-ish to IKEA, but IKEA has really, really made a notable difference to stick to its thing, where generally they're not about assembling, they're not about delivering, and they do have third parties that can arrange some of that stuff. But you walk through their zigzag stores, you pick it up yourself, you put it in your own car, and you drive it home, and you put it together. And they've stuck to it again and again and again and again and again versus deviating. So it's about knowing what makes you different and sticking to it and trying to protect that and not getting commoditized. That meaningful difference we call sweet spot, where what your capabilities allow you to do is something that the customer needs, that there's a perception the customer can't. Perception, whether it's real or not, is secondary. Where people get a lot of troubles, they get right into the middle of this, where your customer's needs and your capabilities intersect with your competitors' offerings. And that's called commodity hell. How do you know you're in commodity hell? Well, your gross margin as a percentage is probably dropping. You're probably having to compete on price more, and your salespeople are talking a lot about price. And that's an indicator, not the truth. It's an indicator that you're potentially creeping in there. So that's our piece of strategy. So the one-page strat plan is a document to help you look at your strategy. And it goes from forever, which is, core values is never change, 10 to 25 years, 3 to 5 years, 1 year, and then a quarter at a time. There's a different version that we have as quarterly, but your quarterly execution plan to bring it to life. It's a very simple tool. The boxes are small, so you have to be succinct. And my rule of thumb is it should be so simple in those small boxes that a 12 to 15-year-old kid could read it and understand it. If it's not that simple, it's got work to do. It should be incredibly simple because simplicity scales. Complexity entertains. Simplicity scales. So, and at the root of it, in a version of the one-page strat plan that we've evolved from this is that we've also included more of Collins's concepts like the flywheel. The flywheel, I would argue, is the most impactful strategic tool someone can have to get momentum going in your business. It's very hard to figure out, and the impact is massive. Massive. By the way, Curtis, thanks for doing the math on the cash example there. That's perfect. I love the precision. But the getting the flywheel spooled up makes a difference. And if someone asked me, hey Kevin, if we could do one strategic tool, only one strategic tool, and the one-page plan just brings it to life, but really focus, I would say it needs to be flywheel. The second one I would go to would be Blue Ocean strategy map, because that's where you really focus on your differentiation. This focuses on your power, but it's an incredibly powerful tool. And so if we go through the one-page plan, we've got the core values and your purpose, which is like the heart and soul of the organization to capture what we're about more than just profit. And it's about, with that, you can figure out who's the perfect fit. People that align with that should be a part of your organization. And the purpose is, why are we doing this beyond profit, which we all need sometimes. Once we get lost into only making money, that's not near as fulfilling. Ideally, impact grabs us. And there's some example of the purposes of organizations, but it's truly the difference they want to make in the world. It's not business strategy. It's not about the business. It's about the impact to the greater good, like Walt Disney, to make people happy. Or another one of our clients, AquaGuard, protect the world's #1 resource, which is water. Like that drives them. This was Coastal Contacts back in the day. Save the world from the eye care cartel. They even got legislation changed so that the patient owned the prescription instead of the optometrist. Now, that was very convenient for their business because they were about providing glasses and contacts, not doing exams at that point in time. One of our clients out of Edmonton, Little Potato Company, it's to feed the world better. And their mind, potatoes is a great, great thing to help feed the world better. And this is their purpose. It's on their brand new building in Edmonton. You can see it. They've also got same thing in one of their buildings in the US. But that's been driving them. And it's legit. Like, it's in the heart and soul of Angela, the CEO, and that team. Next is the BHAG, big, hairy, audacious goal that sits in the middle of the hedgehog. But what is this massive goal? And they have one, Little Potato Company, about the pounds of potatoes that they want people to have per year. per person in the countries they're in. That's what drives them in around. And they've achieved it in Canada, and now they're going to another level. And there's lots. So the BHAG fits down here in that 10 to 25 year plan. And it's BHAG is supposed to be a massive 25 to 30 year goal that has a high probability of success, but it's a real stretch to get us above the clouds and continually pushing and seeing what's possible. It's a great tool for a CEO to lead with. And then what are the moves to double the business? This is the 3 to 5 year plan. In my new book, I'm calling it, the 3 big moves. But that should double your business in size and strength or capability. And it's getting clear. What are those numbers and what are those investments that we make? What are we going to really, really focus on? And then it breaks down to the annual. What's our number one priority for the year? What's the one thing we can drive that'll make the biggest impact to drive towards our 3 year, to drive towards the BHAG? And again, we just break it down and get very specific. And the idea of this is that when you ask a room of smart executives and leaders in a company, what's most important for the company, you're going to get all these different opinions. And without a really sharp plan, people are going to chase what makes them entertained, interested, or they think valuable. Maybe it's the clown in the bottom corner. Maybe it's the wheel or the ace of hearts or the balloon or the green slime. Everyone's going to pick what resonates with them. And that makes chaos. And that's the opposite of alignment. And our job as leaders is to figure out what's actually going to impact the business most, which is usually not the shiny stuff. And there's these things here that look like rocks. Rocks that are kind of not as exciting, but if we can calculate and be strategic and say, focusing on that is going to get us notably better results. And aligning the company around that is going to be better for everyone. And then helping to guide people on what to focus on. They're still going to do other things, but we're aligning our focus and aligning our resources to win. And then we drop down to the quarter and the same thing, and we zoom right in. Ideally, when we get to the quarter, we are tactical. We're zoomed in. These are the 2 or 3 things that matter. So I was just this morning on with some basic co-CEOs of a private equity firm that I work with. And we were just talking about the goals for the quarter. We know the longer term, but for the quarter, we're saying, hey, I know we got a list. They said we've got 7 or 8 things. I said, okay, if there's 1 or 2 or 3 that must happen, what are those things? And then the rest are nice. We almost label them like bonus or, time allowing or resources allowing. But we got down to the 2 or 3 things and got deep focused. And that's hard because so much comes up and we get distracted. And even for CEOs and executives, it's hard. As you get farther down the line, there's so many things pulling at you. It's really hard to maintain focus. And that's a lot of what this framework does. It helps people to maintain focus on the highest value, highest impact things that aren't the funnest, that aren't the sexiest, that may or not even be something that they enjoy doing. But it's going to make a difference. So we drive our discipline and our resources to the stuff that matters. And then there's room for the other stuff as well, but really focusing the core. And really the quarterly is like a 13-week race that goes by like this. And that's why we make sure people check in every week, ideally on their goals and how they're progressing and where they're stuck, and continue to, at the end of every 13 weeks, okay, how do we do? Almost like a sports coach watching game tape after a big game. How do we do? What do we learn? How are we going to be better next game? Or for us, next quarter, or the next 90-day sprint. And we got that. And there's another piece in scaling up that's really powerful, and it takes some extra energy, but this is how you take that number one thing and you drive it down to the front lines. And it's called quarterly themes. And the idea is the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. And that's hard with humans because we love shiny things. And sometimes we at the top are the worst for this. But it's to figure out what are these things that we're going to measure and what are we going to celebrate in terms of achievement, and then drive it down to the front lines. So I have a whole list of this, and Curtis, we should really do a full report on this because there's so many amazing themes our clients have done over the years. I'll just share the first one, high five. And we did some work in the Middle East with Gap and Banana Republic, somebody who had the franchise for that region. And at the end of the day, every industry has a certain couple of numbers that really drive a business. And in retail, it's normally traffic counts and then items per transaction, or I think IPT they would call it, or ATV, average transaction value. So number of people coming through a store, basically by items or by dollars, the value of the transaction. Well, there we did IPT, items per transaction. So what we found is that normally in a Gap or Banana Republic store, it would be 2 point something items per transaction was normal. And globally, that was true at that point in time. I don't know today. This is more than 10 years ago. And so we ran this thing called High Five. Now, in that company, we had people from 30, 40, 50 different countries working in that division of the business. And we had to pick something very simple that would translate across different, backgrounds and understanding. So we picked high five because in most cultures, that's a positive thing, like giving someone a high five. And 5 transactions was a spectacular transaction. And so we drove this theme. They built out a whole plan, competition between all the stores, weekly reinforcement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it was launched with an event at the beginning of the quarter. And then they started to go through and track this. And what they found is the number of 5s went through the roof. And because people were celebrating it like crazy, the winning store with the highest IPT per week got lunch brought by one of the executives. It was an amazing, amazing program. In the end, the number went from high 2s, say conceptually, from 2.7 to 3.2. And at that point of time, in the entire Gap and Banana Republic system, that was the highest that had been achieved over a period of time for items per transaction. So they did spectacularly well. So it aligned the team at the front line, store level. They got to focus on it and celebrate. They trained around it. They rescheduled to make sure in their highest traffic times, everybody was on the floor. No one was stocking shelves. They made a whole bunch of positive changes and rallied around this one key metric in a fun way that made a difference. So it made people feel good. And there was great celebration along the way and a big reward at the end. They did a spectacular job. 57 new friends was landing new customers. Crave was a travel agent doing value-added selling because they make money on the value-added stuff, not necessarily on the tickets. I Love the 90s was retail mystery shopping. Route 66 was improving cash conversion cycle. This company, we put 12 million bucks back in the bank because they had their outstanding cash in the business was 90 days and we got it down under 66. The goal was 60, but we picked Route 66 because there was a song and a road and we could have fun with it. Cash Corral Roundup, another one of our clients out of Texas, about getting the cash back in. It's a theme and an internal marketing campaign around the number one goal. And ideally, in a way, like for example, in retail, where there's a customer benefit. So by the way, in Gap and Banana Republic, the thing about it that was awesome is that it drove better service, right? And again, you can't sell in most retail. You can support, give options, man the changing rooms if it's clothing, offer other things, let them know about a sale, let them know about this. So it's really supportive, a better customer experience in that case. And when your themes drive something that's to the experience of the customer or better solving a customer problem, then they are even better. And then there's a whole section on individual plans, and we've got other tools built out for this, but how do I, as a leader or a frontline person, help the company win and align my goals with that of the company? And there's the last column on one of the versions that's an individual plan. We don't use that one as much, but we have a separate page where individual plans for all of the key leaders that we meet with. And then that tool can be cascaded down to every team. Basically, what are the couple numbers that indicate my team or I are thriving? And what are my 2 or 3 goals that ideally align back up? Now, whether you use this, some people use OKRs or other things, it's all the same. But how do my goals and projects that ideally have a measurable outcome cascade up into the master so I'm helping the company move ahead while I'm doing my most important work? So KPIs and the rocks are the goals. And then the critical number, when people do themes, they would cascade that critical number through. So if I ran, one of the Gap stores, my critical number as a store manager might be 4. I'm gonna go take my store from a 3 IPT to a 4. We're gonna use the high 5 theme to drive it, but I'm gonna, for example, push for the 4 if we cascaded that. So that's the one-page plan. It's not rocket science. It just cascades our most important strategic things so they don't get lost in PowerPoints and all over the place. It's like Touchstone. We go back to our document, remind ourselves of our plan, and then we drop in and pick our next goals for the next 90 days. On an annual, we zoom out, think about the whole thing, And then we reset and refine that 3-year strategy because it's always evolving a long time, reset the annual, and then lock down the 90 days. The highest value for the CEO and exec is that 3-year piece. Are we getting towards the numbers that we want? And are those our biggest investments that are really going to move the needle? By the way, my measure on the 3-year goals is that each of those goals should be worth at least 25 to 30% of your annual profit going forward. Like they should have a notable impact. No goals that impact by 75 cents. That's not what we're doing. Truly notable impact. All right, just a couple more minutes here. And the last thing is execution. And Jim Collins talks a lot about creativity and success. And one of his favorite quotes in our sessions with him is, success comes from relentless execution of the boring basics that fit in your hedgehog. Now, a lot of entrepreneurial CEOs don't like this, particularly the founder type personality, because they're into creativity and innovation and all this really cool stuff. That's good. You need to do enough to be successful, but that's not why companies scale. Companies are successful and scale because of relentless execution of the boring basics, grinding it, consistently delivering amazing service or whatever it happens to be, right? Consistently delivering what the customer wants in a way that is profitable for us and a great value for the customer. So there's the Rockefeller habits. I just want to talk on the meeting rhythms because it's most often mixed up. And when we start to roll out scaling up, daily meetings, some people love them, some people don't. They're really impactful if they're done right, and ideally under 10 minutes. And the weekly meeting is critical because that's where you should be reviewing your goals every quarter so they don't get forgotten. So daily meeting, really simple. What's up? Daily metrics and where are you stuck? Going around the room with your team every day. We've got resources on our website and podcasts and sample videos of this. It's very powerful to align a team, particularly if you want them to move ahead faster. The weekly agenda, the point I want to make is the big red line. Most weekly meetings are a drag. They're Boresville because everyone's providing an update. It's my chance to talk about all my work. And you pay your best people to sit there for an hour and be bored out of their mind. The most important thing is to get a bit of data on the table, some good news, how are we doing on our goals and our numbers, and what are we hearing from our customers or employees? And then you cross the line and you start to brainstorm and work on a big question or a big valuable debate that helps us to achieve our goals and move ahead. This takes practice and discipline to make sure that every week you're debating important stuff. And it's the biggest miss I see in companies. Mostly they don't review the goals every week, which makes it harder to achieve. But secondarily, this collective intelligence piece is a piece that people don't get to. And then they wonder why there's this debate deficit that builds up, or the team is fragmented or misaligned, or people keep saying they want to skip the weekly meeting because they're bored out of their mind. The debate, using people's brain power and capability and knowledge to align around important stuff, is the highest value of any meeting, in particularly a weekly meeting. That's what it should be. It is not an update meeting. Growing smarter is something that we're at Lawrence & Co. we're big on. And it's a chapter in your Oxygen Mask First. But the best leaders are amazing learners, and they continually learn and apply. Not just the type who just learn intellectually and nothing changes. That's actually a waste of time. But they're learning and applying different things in their business. Michael Dell, start with smart executives and keep them smart. That's key. We got to continue to do it. And a lot of organizations aren't learning organizations. And well, that's okay. My clients like that you're not, or our clients like that you're not. But we want, it's a path. And there's lots of examples in scaling up about the learning piece and the commitment to learning. Mark Cuban, 180 minutes a day. He made a deal with his wife when he got married, is that he was going to spend a lot of time learning, because his philosophy is, if I'm going to compete against the big guys, I don't have the same resources. When he started, he's pretty okay today. But if I'm going to compete with the big companies, I need to be smarter. And the only way I can win is to outsmart the big competitors. So lots of great resources. I was just talking with a CEO today about this book, Our Iceberg is Melting, because he didn't understand change management. He didn't understand why people were resisting the positive things that he wanted to make happen in his organization. But he didn't understand the root of change management, and our little friends, the icebergs, are really helpful. We're in Chicago last week, and we read this book 10 years ago in all of our clients. And this book came up again last week when we were talking about a change. And like, hey, we got to penguin it, which is code word for we got to use the proper change management framework and iceberg is melting. And it's a brilliant book. John Cotter's brilliant at change. That's his sweet spot. I'm going to skip through. There's lots more. So in summary, I was aiming for 45 minutes and we're at 47. So continue to take your business from where it is and scale it is not rocket science, or as one of the execs said, it's not rocket surgery. It's a lot of disciplines, and we need tools and frameworks to help us. Great source research from Jim Collins, and then tools from scaling up and lots of the other frameworks that we use to help us build the environments and the structures to win. It's just kind of like having lanes on the roads and arrows pointing in the right direction and speed limits on our roads. They help. And we need that to help us drive and manage our growth and keep our people aligned and make sure we continue to grow and scale. Right? That takes a lot of pressure on us. And make sure that we grow like this and fill the deck with the A players who make it easier. And by the way, that is the most important move. Learn how to only allow A's on your team. And with the other ones, they're wonderful. They're just painful. And then knowing your plan so you stay focused on it and don't lose sight, because it's really easy to lose sight, and stay focused on what matters short term, zooming in, and then not forgetting that it's relentless execution of the boring base. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket surgery, but staying focused on the things that matter strategically, that improve your competitive advantage and your momentum on your flywheel, and then tactically, the few things that matter most, usually to the customer. So I'd like you just to think about from this overview and make a note. What is the most valuable action that you can take based on this? What are the one or two things that you can take away from this to bring to your team? Maybe it's a section of scaling up you need to go and read. Maybe you talk to one of our consultants to help at your next quarterly meeting dig into a certain area. And I go back to the late Steve Jobs to kind of wrap up. And you can read the quote on screen. Our job is really, really to help people thrive, and we need to give them tools and frameworks. And if we want people to win without it, it's hard. And our job as leaders is to set the vision of what it can be, and then get people aligned and believing and having the tools to be able to win and stay on track. We need lines painted on the roads. We need a destination that we're heading towards, all that stuff. And so my hope for you is that you'll find a way to leverage these tools. And then every once in a while, go back and read Jim Collins. Again, we've got a great event with him in October in Chicago for people to bring their teams. He's the master. Come learn from the source of him. Go read his books, and read his articles. He's got the source. And then scaling up, go back and read the scaling up sections about the framework and how do you leverage the framework. And if it's about you and your growth, go back to Oxygen Mask First. And about what part of those things as a CEO do you need to master in your own growth. Anyway, thank you for your time. Glad to take any questions in the Q&A if there's any other questions. And if there's something we can assist you with, reach out. We're here because we love this stuff. This is fun for us. We love to play this game. And if there's something we can do to help you or your team, let us know. If you're already one of our clients, as a bunch of you are, then your coach or advisor is somebody that can support you. All right, enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to stop the webinar right now and take a few questions if there is any in the Q&A.